All right. Hey there, Open Forcers, and welcome back to this episode of the Gig Academy, where we talk about all things independent contractor and gig economy related. Today, joining me, we have Colton Lawrence from Equinox Owner-Operator Solutions. He is the CEO and president of the company. And also, if I'm not mistaken, you're the host of your company podcast, Equinox Owner-Operator Solutions. And I've got it here open on my Spotify right now. Is that true, Colton?
That's true. Yeah. We've got our own podcast. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. It is available out on all of the major podcast platforms. And there's a lot of good information about what we'll be talking about today, as well as some more in-depth information on some of the topics if anybody feels like diving into some of those topics in more detail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks for joining us today. Really excited to kind of hit some of these high level points that you guys really dive deep into in your podcast and just what you guys do. You guys are experts at this. And what we're going to be talking about today too is, specifically tax prep for independent contractors. So first off though, to kick things off, what is Equinox and how did it get started and how did you come to be involved in this area of expertise?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So Equinox Owner-Operator Solutions has been around since about 2010 in its current form. It was owned at that time by a larger trucking company here in the Salt Lake Valley. And I hired on and ran that company for that ownership group for 4 or 5 years. At that time, there was a generational ownership change at the trucking company, and the new ownership decided to move away from some of their subsidiaries and side businesses. And that presented the opportunity for me to purchase the company. And I did that back in October of 2016. So I've been the owner since then. And what we focus on is accounting, tax preparation, and business consulting services for owner operators, independent contractors, and transportation, as well as other types of industries. But that's our primary focus. We work a lot with couriers, truck drivers, small fleet owners, all of the above, and helping them be successful, minimize their tax liabilities, and stay up to date on what their requirements are.
That's awesome. And we're so happy to have you guys as a partner and as a part of the member benefits portal for all enrolled on the OpenForce platform for independent contractors. You guys are such a valuable resource, and really happy to have you on to talk about this, especially taxes. We're in tax season, man.
That time of year.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of independent contractors right now, and just everyone in general, just worried about what are taxes going to look like this year, and what do I do? So with that in mind, what should an independent contractor or small business owner do first to formulate a plan for taxes?
Well, there's a lot that they should be doing.
Okay.
First of all, you mentioned plan. They need to have a plan for their overall business. One of the things that we see way too often is folks they'll get into this environment, whether it's leasing a truck or doing courier work, whatever it is, they view it going in as more of a job,
Right.
similar to any other W job, right? And it's just not that. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of differences that people need to be aware of, and they need to plan for. If your plan is to just go into it with the idea of kind of replacing your income from when you were a W-2 employee, that's fine. That's an okay plan, but and understand it. And then again, if you're wanting to grow a small business and end up where you have multiple vehicles, multiple trucks, whatever the case may be, got to have a plan in place. And there are a lot of tax aspects to that we can talk about. But just first and foremost, people have got to have a plan. They got to set their goals and know where it is they want to go with this adventure that they are on.
Definitely. So does that even look like, finding, and maybe this is something Equinox provides, like kind of like I hear of Expensify for tracking mileage, et cetera. Is that kind of like to kind of get into the, I guess, a little bit of the granular aspect? Is that kind of what you mean by, formulating the plan as well?
Yeah, they need to know what tools they're going to use for sure.
Right.
There's a lot of apps out there for all kinds of different things. There's a lot of tools out there for accounting, a lot of tools out there for taxes. It goes to, one of the things I talk a lot about is having a team. So for a business owner, you need to surround yourselves with people that are smarter than you are at certain aspects of the business, right? I'm the CEO and owner of Equinox, but I've got a team around me at Equinox that do different things. I've got a marketing team, I've got a sales team, I've got an operations team, and they all do different things to help me be successful in the adventure I'm on in terms of ownership at Equinox, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing at Open Force. There's a lot of members of the team, and that concept sometimes gets lost for independent contractors. They think, well, this is just a solo journey. I'm doing this all by myself, and I've got to do everything on my own. Right. And that really couldn't be further from the truth, right? They need to engage people with them to help them be successful, and that could include an attorney. It could include a tax professional. It could include somebody to develop a website for them if that's something that they want. So bringing that team together and having those folks around them that can help them be successful is a big part of the plan. And then bringing in those tools, like you mentioned, like an Expensify or something else, like an Equinox, if that is something they want to do, to help them with these different aspects of the business.
Definitely. That's awesome. And I started a small business, and a lot of people actually at Open Force have side hustles and started small businesses and everything too during the pandemic and a little bit before. So, and, wearing a bunch of hats, and it can seem like too, like you're alone, like you said, in that journey and everything, and it's all up to you and you're shouldering the burden. I know I felt it in my own, small little journey that I'm on with my side knife making business and everything. But going along those lines, and I think it's really powerful what you said there. Why is it so important for independent contractors and entrepreneurs to take the time to manage and track income and expenses and reach out to an Equinox?
Well, anybody who's going into business for themselves is doing it primarily to make money. Right. I don't imagine, I guess there's a lot, maybe your knife making is somewhat of a hobby. And if you make some money on the side, that's great. But most of the folks that we work with, they're doing this to provide a living. And so the more money you can keep in your pocket that you're making, the better. And the best way to do that is to have a system in place to track that income, track the expenses. And that allows for a couple things. On the tax side, it allows a professional like Equinox to come in and minimize that tax liability. We can take advantage of all the deductions that are out there for you. We can consult you on how you compare to others in your same arena, look for areas where you can cut expense. And then it allows us to consult you on different things you can be doing from a tax perspective to maybe cut down on that liability and take advantage of the laws and rules that are out there to your advantage. And that's really important. So it starts with having a system in place to track those income and expenses.
Excellent. And that just at the end of the day means more money in your pocket, right? It's essentially what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
We all definitely need a little bit more of that in all of our wallets these days. That is for certain. So, here at Open Force, I see a lot of, independent contractors that, are either new to gig work, kind of stumbled into, gig work, or some other kind of life circumstances has led them into this field of, not employment, but, of a living and everything. And they don't have, their own LLC. They don't have a business entity set up. They don't have a sole proprietorship set up. What are they missing out on? Are there tax benefits here that they should be setting that up so they can take advantage of that?
There can be, and it's a really in-depth question. And to answer that, the first thing I would say is everybody's situation is different, right? I got to give that tax disclaimer out there for everybody that you can't take what I'm saying here to be your situation. But that being said, just generally speaking, for independent contractors, if they want to set up an LLC out of the gate, it's really going to be more of a legal benefit.
Okay.
And I'm not an attorney, so I can't technically consult them on the legal benefits of that. But just generally speaking, it's going to separate personal assets from business assets. It's going to provide some protections there on the legal front that are definitely beneficial. When it comes to the tax benefits, which I can speak to in depth, there's really not much of a difference at the highest level between an LLC, a single member LLC, and somebody who's running as a sole proprietor, right? They're taxed exactly the same way. It's the taxes are for the business is going to show up on a Schedule C. That Schedule C is part of their their 1040, which is their individual income tax return, and it all flushes out at the end the same way.
Okay.
That being said, having an LLC opens up the opportunity to look at certain types of tax elections that can bring some tax benefits depending on how much money you're making. And again, looking back at their plan, what it is they want to accomplish, we can look at that and say, well, based on what it is you want to accomplish and where you're going with your business, and how many vehicles or trucks you want to add if you're looking to do a fleet, or how much money you're making, we might look at things such as an S Corp election. S corporations are something a lot of folks are familiar with. There's tax advantages there that can eliminate what's called self-employment tax. There's other responsibilities that come with it. But again, in the interest of staying high level, to answer your question, it's a good thing to do for the legal protections, and a good thing to do to set them up for future tax saving, if applicable.
Got it. So it's more of one of those things too, like you said, like if you've got a plan, you know what you're doing kind of with the LLC, and you are looking to maybe grow and expand down the line, that's where it's gonna really provide you maybe more tax benefits over the immediate legal benefits of what you're describing is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, correct.
Excellent. Okay, great. That's great advice. And I know that a lot of our ICs will definitely get some use out of that information. So then too, going along that line, going from a single vehicle to maybe even a fleet, if that's where someone's wanting to go, what should our listeners know about, the tax handling of assets, such as their personal vehicles that they use for the contract work that they're doing?
Yeah, so here it's important to understand what type of business or what type of contractor we're looking at, right? If it's a courier and somebody that's using their personal vehicle as a contractor, that personal vehicle is going to be handled very differently than an over-the-road truck driver who has purchased, like a Class 8 tractor and is driving cross country. Those assets are set up very different ways, and they're handled very differently for tax purposes. For the courier who's using a personal vehicle, they're going to take a mileage deduction, and that mileage deduction is going to cover everything in terms of their fuel and maintenance and insurance, and a lot of those expenses that are associated with them using that personal vehicle. They'll take that mileage deduction for the miles that they drive, and they'll get a tax deduction for that on their Schedule C. That's very different than an owner-operator driving a tractor who is going to set that asset up for depreciation, depending on the class of vehicle. It's going to be eligible for different types of depreciation and different time periods of depreciation. And that tractor driver is going to take actual expenses. So rather than looking at how many miles they drive, they're going to need to track their fuel and track their insurance and track all of these different expenses and take those as an actual deduction. Courier is just using a mileage deduction for those types of expenses. So again, very different and very important to know, because we see all the time tax returns come in from tax preparers who don't understand transportation, and they'll treat a truck driver like a courier, or they'll treat a courier in reverse if it's a courier who's doing something that maybe doesn't really fit the mold of like a rideshare driver or something your average tax preparer sees on a regular basis. They'll try and do some different things that just don't make sense to folks who understand tax preparation for this world. And mistakes can happen, and those mistakes can end up costing the contractors a lot of money. It can cost them. It can result in penalties and fees and interest if it results in balances due. So it's just really important for these contractors to understand that their situations are different, and they need to talk to a professional who understands transportation to help them take best advantage of the resources that are out, or the rules that are out there for them from a tax preparation perspective.
Definitely. And I bet that gets even more complicated if they have multiple lines of revenue streams, like multiple contracts that they're working for with different, companies. And like, say they even like throw in like, I'm going to do some DoorDash and Uber on the side to fill in any downtime I have. Like that probably even makes their situations more, convoluted and complicated. And, like you said at the beginning, every single person's taxes are going to be different than the next person. So
Yep.
yeah, I can only. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
situation's different. And I have clients who, say one spouse is out driving truck and there's a spouse at home, and to make some extra money, they're out doing rideshare or DoorDash or something along those lines. And we've had situations where a tax return from a prior year comes in, and it just all gets lumped into one bundle on a Schedule C, and it's just, again, it causes problems. So you've got to be working with somebody who understands this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Can't be trying to figure it out, or probably hitting up TurboTax for this type of
definitely don't do that.
Right on. So why should small businesses or a small business owner look at paying quarterly estimated taxes instead of one big lump sum at the April 15th deadline?
Well, one thing we know about most of is that we're not very good at saving.
Yeah.
Right. That's an American problem. We just don't have enough in savings to carry us through, and our money goes a lot of different places. One of the biggest reasons for failure that we see amongst our clients are folks that don't pay their estimated taxes. Reason being is they get to the end of the year. Maybe it's their first year. Maybe they've been doing it a while and just stuff comes up. But they get that tax return that we're preparing for them. And as good as we are, right, if you're making money, you're going to pay taxes. It's just the way it goes. If you've got somebody who's telling you, no matter what, I can make it to where you don't owe taxes, you probably ought to turn and run the other way, because that's somebody who's doing some stuff that's probably not above board.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there are people out there that aren't required to pay taxes based on the situation. Just in general, if you're making money, you got to pay taxes. And so what happens is they get that, that time somewhere between February and April, or maybe even after that, they get that tax return done. And let's say I come to the client and I'm like, hey, you owe, based on your income and everything that's going on, you owe $15,000. You can almost see it phone when you're talking to them, right?
Yeah.
See the deer in the headlights look at, because they're like, you can sense that they don't have that money available. And it's much harder for folks to come up with $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 all at once than it is to pay that over the course of the year, right? So it from that aspect, it helps if they will pay their estimates, because those estimates are applied to their annual liability. And so when you get to the annual tax preparation, it just makes for a much smoother conversation. And there's that sense of hey, I don't need to come up with all of it at once. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is it's required outside of a few exceptions, such as somebody who is coming into this for the first time in their first year of being a contractor, and a few other situations. It's required that they pay estimated quarterly taxes. So if, let's say, somebody does have the $15,000, I tell them, hey, you owe 15 grand at the end of the year. And they're like, oh yeah, no problem, I got that. Well, the other part of this is that if they haven't paid their quarterlies, they're going to get hit with an estimated tax penalty most of the time. There are, again, certain circumstances that won't result in that, but most of the time they're going to get hit with that estimated tax penalty. Well, that's a few $100s out of their pockets that they could have kept in their pocket.
Right.
So why give the government more money than you need to? Our goal is that you pay what you're required based on the law, but not a dime more.
Yeah.
And anytime they haven't paid those estimates, that's money out of their pocket that didn't need to leave their pocket.
Man. Yeah. Wow. That is good advice. So, I mean, and to everything you're saying there, man, just makes me start to sweat just thinking about being in that scenario, deer in the headlights, you owe $15,000 kind of thing. And, for some of our listeners that might be out there that maybe owe the IRS money, or maybe they're behind on filing taxes for previous years, what advice would you give them? So yeah, this unfortunately happens more often than it should, and probably than people realize. There are estimates out there that some 15 to 25% of the country have
tax delinquencies, whether it be at the IRS or at their state level. And maybe that the IRS doesn't even know about yet. There's all kinds of circumstances that come up there. But if you're in a situation where you know you owe the IRS or the state money, you haven't filed your taxes, or you have filed and you just have a large balance due, the thing you can do is to take what I call the ostrich approach, stick your head in the sand and just think it's going to go away.
Yeah.
Okay? Unfortunately, a lot of people think that's the case because of the environment with COVID. The IRS has ceased collections. They're just not going after folks right now.
Right.
And that is going to be going away here very, very shortly.
Okay.
So there are going to be notices going out again. And so it's just a bad way to go. The thing to do is to get with somebody who understands that process, can put a good plan in place for you to rid yourself of that stress and rid yourself of that problem. And by you being proactive, if you're in the situation, if you just attack it and get that plan in place and you go to the IRS with your tax professional, you're more likely to have a beneficial outcome than if you wait for the IRS to come to you, because you're just avoiding them, ignoring them, all of the things that a lot of people do.
Right.
And so just give us a call. We do what we call tax resolution services. We can help out folks that are in that situation and help them get those problems resolved. And we're we are very, very competitive, below competitive rates when it comes to that stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard a few things kind of on the news talked about. I'm curious if you can give more insight into this. Like the IRS is short staffed, so get your taxes done earlier, and like it's going to take even longer to get your tax return back if you have a tax return coming your way. And these kind of stories of people that are still expecting their 2020 tax return. Is that accurate? Are you guys seeing these long wait times on things with the IRS? Is that true that they're understaffed and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some 75% of calls into the IRS go unanswered.
Oh, wow.
And so we've got some backdoor channels that we can get in touch with the IRS more efficiently than the average person can. The average person, they're going to wait on hold for an hour to 2 hours. Yikes. And then ultimately be disconnected after sitting on hold with no one answering. It's maddening. And so we can usually get in much quicker, and we can get those responses and get that communication going. But yeah, they're definitely very short staffed. In terms of filing now and not waiting, because of the stimulus payments and the advanced child tax credit and all these things that have come about because of COVID, there are a lot of things that folks aren't used to needing to report to the IRS on their tax return that might get missed. Right. And so if you miss that, or if you're wrong in reporting it and you put it on your tax return and you electronically file and you do everything in time and say you're expecting a $3,000 refund, but you were wrong on one of those elements that we now need to report, like say the stimulus, that possibility of delaying your refund for an unlimited amount of time based on this understaffing issue, and it cause you to not get your money for a long time. So we really stress, again, having that plan, having all of your ducks in a row, knowing what it is you need to report, and getting it done timely, and definitely at all costs, don't paper file. If you paper file, your return is going to go sit in a warehouse with 5 million other tax returns and sit there and wait for probably another year or 2 years before it gets processed. And in the meantime, you're going to be receiving letters from the IRS telling you to file your tax return when you already did, but they don't know because it's sitting in a warehouse. Frankly, it's a disaster right now. So it's a good time. All that being said, it's a good time. If you do have tax issues, it's a good time to get it taken care of, because they're kind of it's a sleeping dragon right now. And you've got the upper hand a little bit, or as opposed to when they wake up and they finally get the funding and get the staffing, they're going to be coming after you. And the folks that are calling you at that point, their job is to collect as much tax revenue as possible. Their livelihoods depend on it. And so they're less likely to be, as nice as they might be otherwise. Okay.
Well, that's good advice. And man, this is one of those topics, and I'm glad you're out here, doing the Lord's work, helping people navigate this really stressful thing that we all have to deal with one of the two things in life that are certain, what, death and taxes,
That's right. Say it all the time.
Yeah. Glad you guys are there to help people out that need it. And, if ever I'm a completely 1099 or my knife business takes off and I'm employing people and still trying to do things, under the model I'm doing them, I'm going to be hitting you guys up for advice on this. Cause yikes, that is a frightening scenario. So Colton, we're kind of winding down here. And thank you again for being on the podcast with us. What closing thoughts do you or advice do you have for our listeners? And for those that want to learn more about your tax prep services that you offer, where should they go?
Well, they can visit our website at www.equinoxbusiness.com. I'll say that again, www.equinoxbusiness.com. Out there on the website, there's all kinds of resources. Other ways of contacting us, we'll have our phone number. There are web form submissions that they can do. There's a chat feature. There's all kinds of things that they can do to get in touch with us. They can schedule an appointment with me or somebody else on the staff. So that's the best place for them to go. Again, you can also get to our podcast from there. So that's one of the main things I recommend. And then for the open force contractors, we've got a great relationship with open force and have had for a long time that gives us some advantages over the average tax preparer and accountants. First of all, we have a data feed set up to where when you elect our services, that data that's a part of your settlement automatically comes to us. So it takes a big burden of the tracking of income and expenses off of their plates, right? It comes to Equinox automatically. It automatically populates a profit loss statement. We are automatically from that profit loss statement telling them how much they should be paying in quarterly taxes. And then we have plans in place that would then include the annual tax preparation. So it makes it really streamlined for them. And we've got a lot of open clients that are using that right now. So for those that want more information on that, hit us up. We've got some preferential pricing for our open force clients, and we can get them some more information.
That's awesome, Colton. And that is great info for me. I didn't realize that we did that. So I just learned something new here too. So that is great. I'm really excited to, get to talking more with my accounts that I have about Equinox, and that you guys are, if they don't already know, that you're a benefit that all the independent contractors have available to them, and just pushing this conversation out to our clients so they can share it with the ICs, and it'll be out there and they'll be able to reach out to you guys and, hopefully, save a lot of money that they would otherwise leave on the table. So
that's right.
Again, thanks for joining us, Colton. I really appreciate you joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I look forward to doing it again.
Excellent. And thanks for listening, Open Forcers. If you want to learn more about everything that Colton does over at Equinox, be sure to see the show notes and go to equinoxbusiness.com and check out their podcast, Equinox Owner-Operator Solutions, on all the major platforms. I personally listen to them on Spotify while I'm in the gym. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. All right.